until the election. Here, Board Secretary. The board president will preside over the meeting.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting from the Berkeley Heights Board of Education was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. On January 4th, 2024, notice of the Board of Education meeting schedule was sent to the Star Ledger and the Courier News and was also provided to all schools, PTO presidents, the BHEA president, and posted at the administration building. A copy was also provided to the public library and filed with the municipal clerk.
The 2024 election results. In the annual election held on November 5th, 2024, the following individuals were elected to serve on the Board of Education. Dr. Thomas Forager, 3-year term limit, votes 2,455. Pamela Stanley, 3-year limit, 1,950. And Mrs. Deb Torero, a 1-year term limit, 3,418. Congratulations to all those individuals. At this time, I'm going to administer the oaths of office and install the newly elected board members. First, I will do Mrs. Let's see. I will do Dr. Forager first. I, Thomas Forager,
Thomas Forager,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith,
and allegiance to the same
allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
and the state,
under the authority of the people,
the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, Thomas Forager,
I, Thomas Forager,
do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess
that I possess
the qualifications prescribed by law
the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member
for the office of member
of the Board of Education.
of Education,
I'm not disqualified
and not disqualified
as a voter pursuant to
voter pursuant to
RS
RS
10:4.1,
10:4.1,
and that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
partially,
and justly perform
justly perform
all duties
all duties
of that office
of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Next. Repeat after me as well.
I will.
I, Pamela Stanley,
I, Pamela Stanley,
do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, Pamela Stanley,
I, Pamela Stanley,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the office of member
for the office of member
of the Board of Education.
of the Board of Education.
I'm not disqualified
Am not disqualified
as a voter pursuant to
as a voter pursuant to
RS
RS
10:4.1,
10:4.1,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all duties
all duties
of that office
of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And here's the third copy. You can sign all three and give me back, I believe it's one or two. I think
Okay.
it's two.
Back to.
You can just repeat after me like everyone else. I, Deborah Torrero,
I, Deborah Torrero,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
and this
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people.
so help me God.
So help me God.
I, Deborah Torrero, do solemnly swear or affirm
Solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the office of member
for the office of member
of the Board of Education,
that
am not disqualified
is not disqualified
as a voter pursuant to
voter pursuant to
10:4.1,
10:4.1,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform all duties
and justly perform all duties
of that office
of that office
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God. Congratulations.
Yeah, I guess.
All right.
All right.
At this time, we're going to take a roll call. Ms. Akiri,
Here.
Ms. Bradford, Dr. Forager,
Here.
Mrs. Jolly,
Here.
Mrs. Khanna,
Here.
Mrs. Stanley,
Present.
Ms. Torero, Mr. Dillon. At this time, I'd like to take nominations for board president. I need a motion and a second to open nominations.
I'll make a motion to nominate board president.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Who was the second?
Natasha.
Okay. All right,
I'd like to motion to nominate Gail Bradford for board president.
Bradford by Pam Stanley. We don't need seconds, correct? You need seconds.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Dipticana for president.
We have,
I'll second it.
There is no need for a second, okay.
do we have any other nominations for president? Okay, I'd like to close the floor for nominations so we can vote, take a vote on those. We're closing the nominations.
need a motion to close.
So I'll motion to close the floor to nominations for board president.
Second.
We just need a voice vote. All those in
I,
favor?
Aye.
We have any nays? Seeing no nays. Okay. All right, at this time I'd like to have a vote for Mrs. Stanley.
Mrs. Bradford, Mrs.
Um,
Stanley made the motion, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. That is correct.
Don't put me in a spot, man.
All right, at this time, we're going to have a vote for Mrs. Bradford for president. And we need motions, a first and a second for those, correct? Or where that was brought up by Mrs. Stanley, we're going to need a second for that, correct?
No, so at this point, so now the nomination period is closed, you now take a voice vote. You go in the order of the nominations. So if the first person gets a majority, they are president. If
Mhm.
not, you move on to the second one.
Correct.
If
Mhm.
not, then we reopen for nomination.
Yes, but then wouldn't I need a first and a second for this, don't I?
To what? To move to the vote?
Well, we're voting on Mrs. Bradford being president. Or just take the vote, and that's
No,
it?
now you can just move forward with the vote.
Just move, okay. Okay, Mrs. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Dillon? Ms. Torero?
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly?
No.
Mrs. Khanna?
No.
Mrs. Stanley?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Since we have a tie, that means that the motion has failed. At this time, we're going to have Mrs. Khanna vote for her for president. Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon, Ms. Torero,
No.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley,
No.
Mrs. Bradford.
No.
Motion fails.
So in accordance with policy 152, the nomination, I'm going to turn this off and speak very loudly. Okay, is that better? In accordance with policy 152, we now reopen the nomination period and repeat the process.
So I'd like to make a motion to nominate Gail Bradford for board president. I believe Gail has worked really hard this past year, helping the board move forward with the multiple things on this year's agenda for the board. It was a really difficult year. She worked this year to not only build relationships with the staff that we had in place in the administration, but also worked really hard to build relationships outside of the board that benefits the district. A relationship with Mountainside, a relationship with the town council, a relationship with the veterans that is benefiting not just the board, but also the district. And I think that we've seen that she handles herself well and that she always puts the district first. And I think that we would be wise to be under her guidance again. She shows up, she does the work, and she works with the superintendent. We also have a brand new superintendent. Welcome, Dr. Feltry. And it's going to be a transition time, and she will also need the support of the board. And I believe having a board president that has experience will help with that. So I ask that we do not go back to the Union County to make this decision for us, that we work together, that we show we can work together, and we nominate Gail Bradford to help move our district forward.
Have any other nominations?
I nominate Mrs. Connor.
Any other nominations?
We would need a motion to close the nominations again.
Actually, I don't think we did motion to open.
And I agree, we probably did not. There should have been another motion to open. I think I may have.
Yeah, we,
Do we have a motion to open the nominations?
Yes.
do we have a first and a second?
First, Tom, and I'll second.
Yeah, I'll first.
So now we need a motion, sorry. A motion to close.
I motion to close the nominations.
Second.
Okay, now we'll take a vote. Vote will be for Gail Bradford for president. Ms. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Dillon,
Yes.
Ms. Torero, Ms. Jolly,
No.
Mrs. Connor,
No.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion fails. And now we have Mrs. Connor for president. Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon, Ms. Torero, Mrs. Connor, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley,
No.
and Mrs. Bradford.
No.
Motion fails.
I would like to make a motion to table the vice president nomination until we have a board president.
Second.
So
No.
Actually, there hasn't even been a motion to
Yep.
open the nominations for vice president. So we can't table it.
But, and I think before we get to there, if we don't mind, in accordance with your policy, you are this still? Yours?
By all means.
So in accordance with your policy, you're supposed to continue the vote until it's clear. Before we move on, I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable that it's clear that you are unable to elect a president tonight. Of course, as the board attorney, I think just so everyone is aware, at that point, the board secretary is obligated to contact the executive county superintendent, at which point the executive county superintendent, as the board is aware, then moves forward and makes the choice for you. So I assume, I think it's appropriate if there's a motion just to make clear that the board is comfortable that it cannot elect the president tonight to move forward to the vice president. Does everyone is on board? I think that would be the motion. This way it's crystal clear that the board is in agreement to move forward to the vice president vote.
Would you want me to make a motion
Uh, uh,
to
any-
vote on?
Yeah,
Okay,
But
so
I thought you said we were doing one more round, right?
we
For
could,
pres-
if the
yeah.
board is not comfortable, if the board is not comfortable that it's clear that you in fact cannot elect a president, then you should continue until such time as the board believes it cannot. And then someone should make a motion to indicate that we should move forward to the vice president vote.
Yeah, I would like to try another round because
all right, I would like to make a motion to open the nominations for board president for a third time.
So you're making the motion, Mrs. Curie?
yeah, not to do another round, yeah.
Have the second.
Just kind of accept.
Nominations for president.
I'd like to nominate Gail Bradford for board president for the reasons I stated previous.
And I'd like to nominate Mrs. Khanna.
There are nominations. Okay, this time we'd like to close the nominations. I need a first and I need a second.
First.
And I'll second, yeah.
And who's the second?
I seconded it.
Who's? Okay, so we're back to the drawing board. We have vote for Gail Bradford for president. Ms. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Dillon. Yes. Ms. Torero.
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
No.
Mrs. Connor,
No.
Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion fails. We have a motion for a vote for Mrs. Kano for president. Mrs. Curie, Mr. Curie,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon. No. Ms. Torero,
No.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Mrs. Kano,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley,
No.
Ms. Bradford.
No.
Motion fails.
I would like to make a motion to end voting upon board president as we have not come to a conclusion after 3 rounds, and it's obvious that the same people are getting nominated and voted down by the same people. So I would like to move forward with the meeting if possible.
I second that.
Let's move on to the vice president. Mrs. Stanley and second by Ms. Jolly.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly?
Yes.
Security?
I pass.
Dr. Borger?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon?
Correct, and to move them forward on the agenda.
Carrero?
Yeah.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Curie?
Yes.
Motion passes. At this time, are we going to have a vote for a vice president?
So Tom believes that we need to open the motion. Is that correct? Or can I motion to just table that agenda item?
I think what you need, is somebody, if you want to consider vice president, that somebody has to move to open the nominations for vice president. And if there's no such movement or it fails, then we just skip it, I guess.
If I'm not mistaken, I know last year, if I'm not mistaken, after we vote for presidency, I know there was a motion to go, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was Hyman that had made the motion to table it since we didn't have a president. Because it didn't make sense to have, I'm just rehashing what we did last year, and it didn't make sense to put a VP in place when we didn't have a president.
Right.
So I'm just rehashing, so.
Yeah, so last year, forgetting, so I did read the minutes from last meeting, or last year's reorganization, you did table the vote. If you do table it, of course, the executive county superintendent would have the authority to appoint if he so chooses to do so. So there's nothing that obligates the board to move forward with the vote. There's also nothing that prevents. If the board chooses to do so, it can move forward with the vice president nomination and vote on the vice president. So that's really in the hands of the board, whichever direction it likes to go, but either option is available.
I would like to move forward with the vote and let's see where we land.
So then you got to make a motion to open.
I would like to make a move a motion to, I'd like to move to open the nomination for vice president.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Well, we have two nays or three nays? Three nays?
3 nays.
Motion passes. Vice President.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Jolly for vice president.
Any other nominations for Vice President? Seeing none. I'd like to close the nominations for Vice President. May I have a motion and a second, please?
I move to close the nominations for vice president.
I can second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Vote will be for Mrs. Jolly for Vice President. Ms. Akiri?
Yes.
Dr. Forager?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon? Ms. Torero?
No.
Ms. Jolly?
Yes.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanley?
No.
Ms. Bradford?
No.
Motion fails.
So in accordance with policy 152, same thing. The president, we would reopen the nominations unless the board believes that we should move forward at this time.
I would like to move forward just for time's sake.
So if we're going down the same road as last year, maybe at least giving another chance for the vice president to run the meetings, we need somebody to be the chair. So I would like to do another round of nominations for vice president and see where we land. It run until the last time, what happened, Bill, was at the next meeting, every meeting, we'll have to vote for one of the board members to be the chair. So
However, we don't have a board president, so it's very hard to know who could work with that board president well,
So I will,
right?
sorry, just so for ratification, so if the board votes for a vice president, the vice president would serve as the president until the executive county superintendent elects a president. If the board does not vote for a vice president, then the next step would be to vote a president in tem, which would be the person who would just run just this meeting. If then the board is unable to do that, then the board secretary likely would finish this meeting.
And that's what we did last year. We had to go out to Union County. And he took some time, he interviewed, right? And so the first meeting that we had in January, which, right, our next meeting in January, we would have to choose someone to run the meeting. And last year we chose Jordan Hyman. We could obviously choose AJ if needed.
That's how we would proceed. Okay, is there?
yeah, I'd like to, what do you mean? I'd like to move a motion to nominate a vice president.
Second.
Ms. Collins, second. Sorry, Mr. Kerr with the first open nominations and Ms. Khanna second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
You nays again, okay? Okay, and who are we, any nominations for vice president?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Jolly for vice president.
I'll second that.
Do we have any nominations for vice president?
Any other items? Yeah.
Seeing that we have no other nominations for vice president, I need a first and a second to close the nominations.
I'll sit first.
Second.
So we have a vote for Ms. Jolly as vice president. Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon. Ms. Torero,
No.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Khanna,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley,
No.
Ms. Bradford,
No.
motion fails.
Okay, same comment as before, as I mentioned, in accordance with policy 152. Board will continue to vote until such time it believes that it's at an impasse, at which point a motion will be made. At that point, it would be the board secretary's obligation to notify the executive county superintendent.
Vote on anything, or just leaving it the way it is?
No vote, but I think we would take the same motion as last time, a motion to move on to the next part of your agenda. And I think then the next part likely would be the board so chooses to make a nomination for president in tem.
All right, so I'll move to close the nominations for vice president.
I'll second.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon. Yes. Ms. Torero,
Ms. Khanna?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Motion passes.
So in the absence of a board president and vice president, the board has the ability under its policy to nominate a president tem just to move forward with the current meeting. If the board so chooses not to do so or is unable to elect an individual, then the board secretary is authorized via your policies to run the organizational meeting, and he would continue to do so. Everyone understand?
That's fine.
Perfect.
AJ, can I ask you, do you feel comfortable continuing the meeting?
Deja vu.
Is everybody in favor of having AJ continue to run tonight's meeting?
I favor that.
Yes.
I feel like I've walked into a movie I've seen before.
So if that is the case, no board action is necessary because he is so authorized to run your organization meeting. Any meeting beyond that, your policies would dictate either you need to move so by way of motion as the board secretary or nominate a president tem until the executive county superintendent chooses a president and vice president for the board.
At this time, I do not have any board correspondence.
AJ, get the mic.
Oh, you need the microphone.
I'll repeat that. At this time, I do not have any board correspondence. Comments from the public on any topic. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on any item. The board requests that individuals state their name and town of residence or school of attendance for the record. All comments should be directed to the board, I should say, to the board secretary, and depending upon the nature and complexity of the question, it may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after this public portion of the meeting has concluded. Although the board may not respond to all items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personal matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by the members of the public. Please note that any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board secretary may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Do we have any members out in the audience that would like to speak? Seeing none.
It looks like we have one remote participation, Mr. Secretary.
Okay.
There's an arm
It's
raised.
over on the side, the right side.
There's a yellow.
It's not on the right side.
Oh, we did over there? Oh, they can just.
Mhm.
On the white part. So
Yeah.
moving on the monitor, on the top, you see.
There's a
like
little
tiny
yellow hand that goes up. Is that on the far right?
Yeah.
Natasha? Yeah.
Hello, can everyone hear me? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you all. If you don't mind speaking into the mic.
The answer was yes. We can hear you.
Okay, great. I have a question about what occurred at the last meeting regarding bylaw 131. And specifically, this is a question for our board attorney. So my understanding is that bylaw 131 provides that bylaws, policies, and regulations can be adopted or revised at a board meeting, or they can be abolished at a board meeting. And it's my understanding that certain members of the board moved to and were successful in abolishing bylaw 131 itself. So my question is, does the abolishment of bylaw 131 itself thereby prevent any subsequent bylaws, policies, or regulations to be adopted because there's no longer a basis for such action? So, in other words, my understanding is the board has abolished the very bylaw that allowed them to pass any further bylaws, policies, or regulations. So where did the board get the authority to pass any subsequent policies at that meeting if bylaw 131 was abolished? Now, to be clear, I don't need an explanation of what was done unless what I have stated is incorrect. I would like the basis in New Jersey law that allows for a board to pass subsequent bylaws, policies, or regulations if they've abolished the very bylaw that allows them to do that. Thank you.
Yes. Caller, could you please identify yourself and your town?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought my name showed up on the screen. It's Ramya Kastori, and I live in Berkeley Heights. Apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have no other. I don't see any other individuals that wanted to be. See anybody else? Okay. Oh, so we're going to close public comments, and I don't know if you'd like to,
Would you like me to respond?
yes, if you'd like, please.
And possibly. There we go. Is this any better? Okay, thank you, Si. I appreciate that. So the board has a lot of inherent authorities as a public body, right? The enabling statute gives the board tremendous power to run itself. But the board also has the ability to limit its power, which it does so through its policies. So policy 131 is that policy in itself. It is the board limiting its own authority. And it does so by way of how it talks about what kind of its ability to pass policies, amend policies, and terminate policies. And in that policy, the board is restricted how it does so, right? So as we know, specifically first reading, second readings, the process that the board utilizes to amend policies. In eliminating that policy, the board has in essence given itself the authority at any meeting to pass any policies, bring any policies, amend any policies without a first or second reading or the process outlined in the board policies. So I think if I'm answering the question correctly, and I hope at least I'm explaining it to the board correctly, the policy itself has limited the board's inherent authority. I think it does so in a way that, again, it's so there's a process in place. But now with that policy gone, the board can do so, can amend any policy it so chooses, bring any policy it so chooses, or terminate any policy it so chooses at any meeting. Any questions on that? Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to have a roll call vote for resolutions A through O for all board members.
I'll make a motion to move resolution A through O, all board members.
Second.
You had a tie there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Bradford, is a second. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns?
This is discussion on everything, right? Because we moved the motion.
Correct.
So I want to discuss item C, the annual meeting schedule. The very first meeting scheduled for January 2025. If there is a way for us to find an alternative date the week before or the week after, would be really helpful. Because I have a conflict at that date. The second point I want to just bring up is looking at the schedule, we possibly need to add at least one more meeting to discuss the superintendent evaluation, something that we did, I believe, last year. So a meeting between the 5th of June and the 26th of June. If we can find a date that works for everybody, I think it'll help us continue and actually complete the process as needed by July 1st.
If I may add to that, I did check with the superintendent prior to this meeting, and we saw these dates or these draft calendar days when the draft agenda was shared last week. We were never sought any input on these dates in December or before the draft agenda was sent to us. So I do have a conflict the week of January 21st to 23rd. I think it's that week. And I would also like to see, especially in light of us not finding a superintendent, like finalizing on one, the president, maybe January 16th would be preferable.
I'm gonna say the 16th will definitely be out of the question because the bills will not be ready since we've just come back. So if you want a bills list, it's not gonna be prepared.
Today is the 7th.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and plus there's been time off. And there's a lot of things to get together before the 6th. You have the 16th date. Doesn't mean that they're gonna be ready up until the 16th. You gotta need another week before that. And
Yeah,
we're at, what is today's date? The 7th?
7th, yeah.
So-
So AJ, you might not have new bills, but as per,
I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be ready. I had a
I-
conversation, so I'm
Yes.
just letting you know.
I'm
That's
just
it.
asking you a question
And I'm
is,
just letting you know an information. That's all I'm telling you. That's all.
so my question is, we had a resolution at the reorg last year where the BA has the authority to approve and pay some bills. So can we at least see those ones that were already paid, not
nothing-
new bills?
Nothing has been paid, and that's more for the summertime than it is right now. Because we just had a board meeting December 12th. There's been a lot of time off after that last meeting because those bills need to be processed and then sent out.
So nothing was paid
no.
between
No, there isn't.
December 12th to now?
We
Okay,
only have it, we don't have that July board meeting, and that's why that has been put into place
okay,
because of that.
okay. So maybe January, the week after.
I would suggest if you're going to do anything, it's probably the 30th would fit into a better time slot for everybody.
Okay.
And the second thing that also is hard is that administration has just come back. And if we tie something to that, they need to get something, I'm gonna say, back for agenda items very quickly.
So my only question is, by the state law, we have to adopt the audit findings by January 15th of this year. So how are we going to handle the audit findings and adoption and submission to the state?
The submission of the audit is due to the state on the 15th. That's the audit to the state. Anything else after that that's due to the state, the audit findings and everything else can be done there afterwards.
So you intend to submit the audit findings without a board review?
That gets done even before any school district. That's the whole entire state it's done.
Well, our neighboring districts are looking at the audit before it's submitted to the state.
Yes, every district, it's that way.
So you will circulate the audit before it's submitted, as long as we
No,
don't.
it's not.
So the audit findings are for our budget for
They
last.
are, and they will be submitted there afterwards. We go through this all the time, and I've explained this last year. Every school district has to submit their audit by the 15th, everybody. Now, not everybody submits their information to the board to be, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Accepted.
Yes. Other districts will accept them and do that there after the fact.
Okay.
Can I, so
There's a
can I,
statutory deadline that it has to be done.
can I just ask a follow-up to make sure that we're all clear on the process? They have to be submitted to the state by 15th of January.
Correct.
There is nothing that the board can technically do to influence or change anything in the finding, other than us being aware of the finding.
Correct. And
So
My
I-
question is, before you submit, will you circulate the audit to us? We don't have to accept it. You're submitting something that we have approved or all the spending for this district. So last year, we saw the audit after it was submitted to the
I don't
states.
even have the audit yet.
So point of order, because this is not on the agenda. So I'm just calling point of order, because it's not on the agenda to discuss the audit and how the audit works. But the Jan 16th date that was discussed would be after the 15th anyways. That's one. Two, I saw an email from Dr. Feltry saying that the 16th would be very difficult for the district to get everything prepared, which I think is what AJ just said. And I believe the 30th, there's a conflict. Yeah, I'm sorry, can you? So right, so the new superintendent wouldn't even be here for the first meeting. So I understand that there could be a better process to get this calendar together, which is why I think we should have governance committees, because that really helps us focus on what the board does, and not so much what the district does. Many of our committees are focused very on the district, but us as a board, obviously, we need some work, right? We need to really work on this. So I do believe that, but again, we're in a time of transition, right? Dr. Feltry has very little to do with this calendar, right? We had an acting superintendent that was just trying to get things done before he had to go back to his other role. So I want everyone to take a deep breath.
Well,
We
just-
all miss
we just didn't
meetings.
Throw this together. We had to put some time together. Again,
And it's
thinking of
very
our
hard to
staff,
get
of
the
what we had to do
administration.
when we came back,
Exactly.
what timelines that we need to put into place in order to get that information to the board and get it prepared. Those were put into considerations, timelines of things that are done for PD, things that are done when there's holidays coming around. Those were all considerations, and we sat and had those conversations, myself, Dirk, and also Mr. Nixon, when we did these things.
So just, going back to the topic at hand, a different date that's not the 23rd, is there, so if I may ask, the dates for the tech SPO is that the whole week? So it's basically the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Is the conflict with just yourself, or is it with several people?
No, sorry,
I think she
let
has a
Dr.
conflict as
Feltry
well.
know as well. I will be away. We're celebrating Aaron's senior trip, so I will be in Colorado then. So I was wondering if the 28th would do. I know it's a Tuesday, but
Right.
we do have a March 18th, which is a Tuesday meeting as well. So maybe if that can work that week.
28th would work for me.
I don't know, Bill, if that conflicts with, Mountainside.
Well, and I think the administration is the one that needs to approve it first, right? Like they need to check their calendars and make sure they can attend, right? And that they can be
But,
prepared.
Mr. Disler, I would like to ask, the board meetings are for the board to conduct their board business and discuss and approve stuff. So I understand we have to take the consideration of the administrative needs and what they need to put together. But what has been happening is if there was, I know we knew who had won the election, we could have shared this tentative calendar, we could have given the same feedback. I wasn't going to be there this week, the week of 23rd. So I understand the administration's concern, but we also have to factor in input from the board members. Correct? The meetings are for the board?
But we need the buildings, right? Like, so it's not just the board says we want to get together, right? It's an open public meeting. So we need, right, the technology, we need the technicians, we need, right? It's a bigger project than just saying, let's show up, which we all know because we had many meetings that we had to address this year. So I think that we can work with the administration to find a date that works for everybody, or for the majority. But I don't want to spend, a half hour just going around in a circle.
We did it for very specific purposes. What the remote, I'm assuming you're talking about board members being able to attend a meeting remotely? Yeah. We did that on a very selective basis for a very specific purpose.
No.
It's not allowed by default, let me say that. It needs a conversation and an agreement that we will allow that on, for whatever reason. It is not a default option. I think Mountainside, maybe you guys have that as a default option? No?
No, we don't
Okay.
have a policy on
So we
that.
don't.
It
But-
was,
But even if 3 board members are out, we still have a quorum to hold the meeting on the 23rd.
In the spirit of trying to work together, if we can find a date that we can make work, if it's the Tuesday, the 28th, I would appreciate that personally.
Mr. Dillon, are
I
you,
can't make it. It's not because it's accomplished.
he
with
cannot make the
Mountainside,
28th.
but, The Mountainside, meeting is the 21st, but the 28th is a personal conflict.
Is it not working?
This will be on the next agenda to get microphones at work. So I'll do my best to speak up.
Can we do this over email, or does it have to be a board vote, right? It doesn't have to be at a board meeting vote, right? Correct?
so the board is required by, under the Open Public Meeting Act, to pass your calendar
Calendar.
without a president. I missed it. I don't know if it's me.
It says one.
I was picking on that.
I turned it off.
Okay. Oh, that's weird. So the board, there's 2 ways to call a special meeting. And at the special meeting, obviously, then you can cancel this upcoming meeting if you so desire. It can either be done by way of the board president can call a special meeting or petitioned by a majority of board members. So theoretically, if you approve this calendar, you then, a petition by a majority of the board can petition to call a special meeting at any date, so prior to that date. And obviously at that date, you can move to amend your calendar.
So is there any other date that we can find between, other than the 23rd, the 28th, or the 30th?
Is the 27th an option? That's the Monday.
Or we can also look at, Dr. Felchi, could you attend it remotely? Could you attend the meeting remotely? Because if 28th is a conflict with you not being here in person
We don't have a policy to attend remotely.
for the superintendent?
But he's the only one he's the only. Is the 28th, Bill, is that, are you the only one that has the conflict on the 28th?
I believe the district said the 27th is what they can do. So can we all agree to make it the 27th? Would we need a motion to do so?
No, when did the district say that? What's wrong with 28th?
AJ and Dr. Felchery just said that they could do Monday, the 27th.
No, can you not do 28th?
I can do the 28th. I don't know. there's
If we're
somebody else.
moving the meeting and we have a board member saying that they can't attend, right? And we're moving the meeting for people who can't attend, we should be respectful of that
I think Mr.
and do the
Dixon
27th.
put the Ken-
It's one, yeah, all I'm
That's why
saying.
I said the 27th.
Okay, and you can't attend the 30th, so let's just keep or the 23rd, let's keep the 23rd. So
Can
let's
we,
please work together.
Can
The
we?
district is saying the 27th,
We have one person speaking.
Bill
at a
is
time.
saying the 27th. Can we please move forward with the 27th together? We might not even have a board president at that time. Let's please work together.
It's a Monday and coming to a long board meeting on a Monday night is difficult. So I'm just saying, if the administration doesn't have a concern, we could do the Tuesday. And also given the fact that the administration, which has all these concerns, never shared any draft dates in December until the early draft agenda was sent.
The 28th will not pass by vote. So I'm asking you to please work together, not delay this meeting any longer. This meeting should already be over. It's an hour meeting already. So let's please work together.
The 27th will work for me.
Is there any conflict with the administration and with the staff on opening the building on the night of Monday, January 27th?
Unless there's a high school event going on that I don't know about. I don't have the schedule.
All right, so as long as there's not a high school conflict for the room, I would like to make a motion to change the January 23rd, 2025 meeting under agenda item C to January 27th, 2025.
I second.
Thank you.
I could make the 27th, yes.
Questions? Concerns?
So there's no conflict then on Monday, January 27th with any board members?
Are we adding other dates for the superintendent evaluation, or are we just doing one date? Yeah.
There's a motion. Did we have a second on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so
Okay.
Unless you want to do one thing, you want to come up with all dates and then just vote on a bunch of dates on one.
I had emailed them to you and
Yeah,
Dr.
fine.
Feltry.
folks, why don't we vote on this
Yeah.
because there's a second? So
Yep.
we'll just vote on this one date
Yep.
and then discuss the other dates.
Also, the June date, we can always add after tonight, right? When we have a board president and the staff has time to look at the schedules. But I will say that I don't see that being a problem because we have a meeting on June 5th and the 26th. So I don't see that being an issue. And we did that on purpose so we can have the teacher educator of the year reception, hopefully without as many agenda items. So
And the
I do think we're already kind of planning for that.
Beginning of June is a busy time with graduation coming up. There are a lot of events. So I think it would give us more time to look at those dates.
Also, I just want to point out, I believe by contract, we have to set goals for the superintendent. Superintendent might be able to help me on this. I thought within the first maybe 2 months. Is that right? So we have to make sure that we have some meetings to do that. And then I want to make sure that we have meetings to do the evaluation. Those are my concerns.
Can we move to vote upon the motion on the table?
No, I think point of order, we need to vote on this and then we can have any further discussion on the calendar.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes,
Mr. Curie,
Pass.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon?
I gotta admit, I'm not sure, are we voting on A through O? Or are we
No,
voting-
no, no.
Just
This is
January.
just
Count
on.
the date
So
change.
we're specifically voting on whether or not we want to change item C, the January date from the
3rd to the 27th.
That's correct.
no.
Ms. Torero,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Curie,
No.
motion passes. Do we have any other discussion?
Yes, on item C, I would like to add the additional meeting. I think I shared those dates with Dr. Feltry and you, AJ. If Dr. Feltry agrees that in the next 60 days, we have to identify the superintendent goals, we need to find a date. And I don't want it to be a special meeting. This is our chance to add that meeting. So I think it was February 10th was one of the dates that I had proposed to review the audit findings. We could also do superintendent goals then. Also May 29th it is on the new business. I wanted to discuss it in December. I would like to separate any recognition events, retirement, award ceremonies for teachers, staff, and students to be a separate event than a regular board meeting. Because what we currently do is we have all these special events during the superintendent's report. And technically, it's not a report. And we spend about 2 to 3 hours during this retirement and award ceremony. We've spoken about this for, I think, 2 to 3 years right now, about the legal counsel being present because it's advertised as a regular meeting, and then the associated legal costs. So I did email Dr. Feltry, and the rest of the board has those dates. So February 10th, I would like to move a motion to add February 10th for superintendent goals discussion, and May 29th for a separate award ceremony for retiring staff and teachers. And there was a November 11th for any awards for sports and student recognition.
Point of order. It's inappropriate because we have no idea if the building's available or not on those dates. To make a motion that the board would have to stick by is inappropriate.
Also, the superintendent's goals are our district goals, if I understand correctly, and our district goals have been adopted.
We have a new superintendent. I have a motion. Do I have a second to add these dates?
Second.
Second.
I would need that to be read back because I'm not exactly sure what we are, and I certainly have not seen an email with a list of new dates.
All right.
This
know
was-
I'm new,
Dr.
but
Feltry,
I
you
don't have-
you responded to the entire board in blind copy, correct? For that response, yeah.
Also, I had a point of order on the table.
Just to recap, I think the dates that we have are additional meetings, one on February 10th for talking through the superintendent goals. There is one on May 29th, and that was to separate out the content of the meeting that we have here for June 5th. So we would treat June 5th as a regular meeting, and May 29th is where we would essentially move the educator of the year and the retiree reception. So that's the only business that we would likely conduct in that meeting. And that should hopefully be a shorter meeting on the 5th as a result of that. And I think you had another date in November?
Yes, November 11th.
So you were on the email for this?
No, I just heard her say that.
Oh, you said we. But
Everybody-
anyways, what I'm going to say is the June 5th meeting is extremely hard to book. I can tell you that because I've been with Dr. Barley when she has to try to get that meeting in because we have to have teacher availability, we have to have building availability, and it is very difficult because GL is getting ready for graduation and we're having award ceremony after award ceremony after award ceremony. So I'm telling you, by just bringing out a date in your head, it might sound great, but it's not realistic when we have not actually looked at the calendar. Again, I don't believe any of this needs to be done tonight. It can be done through email where the staff can work with us to find extra dates if needed. But again, the June 5th meeting is the meeting where we keep it light so we can celebrate the teachers. That's why now we have 2 meetings in June, which is what we did last year. And I thought last year's worked out very nicely. So again, I just think that I don't know if we're just trying to get more time on the clock or what, but we can work a lot of this out after tonight's meeting.
We are trying to get the meeting schedules right now as much as possible so that we can avoid all of the back and forth that we've had in 2024 in order to get these meetings on the schedule.
Right, but how can you expect us to vote on May 29th when we have no idea if the building is even available, if the teachers have availability, when it's the teacher's award you want to move to the 29th, right? So this is just, it's not procedure one, it's just, right, like, it's not productive at all, right? Because we're voting on something that doesn't even, we're just puffing out in the air, right? I'd like to have a meeting August 5th,
Go ahead and propose it.
but that's what I mean. Like, there's no point,
There's
right?
no point of this back and forth, this conversation. If we want, you all agree that we need a meeting to discuss the superintendent goals, let's work our calendars to figure out what date for
So you
all of
need to
us.
convince others because you don't have majority on this, right? unless you know you have majority, which that means OPMA has been violated. So
Again, I'm going to warn you, let's not go about making allegations, right? Just absolutely baseless allegations. Let's
it's
stick
not
to-
baseless, but what I'm
Let's
saying,
stick to the point about, do we want to have a meeting in early February to discuss superintendent goals?
and
Let's
how
just
do
go
you
one meeting at a
expect-
time.
well, we're not, right? We're not going one meeting at a time. The motion on the floor is for 3 meetings, right? So we're not doing that. But again, right, you haven't given me a real reason why we need these meetings, because again, we have already worked through this calendar. We have the same calendar as last year, except last year we had to add in a ton of meetings to get the superintendent. But none of this needs to be done tonight. That's one. And then two, right, like we're coming up with dates that we have no idea about the availability. And then three, I love when the kids come to board meetings. Like if that's the best meetings, right? Like this meeting is pretty awful, right? The meetings where we have students come, when they come up and talk, when we get to celebrate them and all their success, when we get to celebrate the district and all its success, that's why we're here.
We are not debating that. We are not debating that at all.
You're saying that you want to have a separate meeting in November just to get rid of the kids out of a meeting.
Mr.
Right?
Secretary.
Nobody's getting rid of the kids in any meeting. It is
No, that's
just to
exactly what
focus.
Ms. Akiri said. But again, I would like to move forward because of time.
All right, let's move forward with this. What's the third date that you had proposed on here? So I have this down as well.
I have a comment. We have already made a motion to change the calendar once. It is not necessary to have the calendar changed multiple times without adequate information to all board members to see if dates are available or not. So I would say that we've made the motion once to change it to the 27th from the 23rd. At this point, we leave the calendar as it is, and then we discuss it, and then we have the dates, and we determine at a later date. Our executive session could be used for our superintendent goals.
Right now I have a motion on the floor. And what is your third date for November?
11th. And I believe the email that I wrote to Dr. Feltry and AJ, when Dr. Feltry responded, the entire board, the BOE at bhpsnj.org was copied. So maybe, so the new board member and Mr. Bill Dillon didn't get those dates or the conversation and the background information on why I'm asking for these dates. The same discussion was had at the reorg of 2023. There was a discussion at reorg in 2022, and I am going to put together, so historically, before 2020, our district used to have a lot more meetings that were approved at the reorg. So I'm just trying to be proactive and planned instead, especially given what we saw last year. Last year, we were trying to get an additional meetings added for superintendent search. We couldn't agree on them. We added one additional date.
I think
Then-
you made your point, and I think
I'm still
everybody, but everybody has heard that. You just
No.
said that in the beginning of the meeting. If
No,
I'm
I'm
not-
saying.
just
can I-
now.
Can you please not interrupt? Let me finish my last point.
But
That-
you've
Running
made
the
your
meeting,
point,
point of
and you've
order.
just
How
said that
can-
in the beginning, and
No.
what I'm trying to do is move the meeting along.
Yeah.
Since you've just made your point, and this
The
is the
last
second
point-
time.
No, the last point I'm trying to make is, last year it was very difficult to work through the emails with the president that we had for quorum or for adding meetings. Things were not very transparent, dates were being pushed, and I think that is more of an OPMA violation where we are asking for consensus on certain things
Points
by
of
email.
order.
Yeah.
Inappropriate. It's not accurate information.
Point of
either.
order needs to be somebody, if Mr. Disler, if you can explain how point of order works. Point of order, once it's raised, it has to be put to the vote by the chair. And only when the vote passes, the point of order executes. You can't just scream point of order and then say discussion stops. So given our history of what we had last year, where we were really struggling to put new special meetings on the calendar, these are the dates. And I'm sorry if the incoming board member from Mountainside wasn't made aware because we didn't know who this liaison was and the new board member, but the rest of the board and the superintendent were aware, including AJ, on these dates. Thank you.
Not all board members have been informed. We need to move on.
is your board not, email not included in BOE@bhpsnj.org?
I never saw this November meeting. I don't recall it at
So
all.
I have a question
right.
for
But
the
that's not the
administration.
point.
Excuse me, let's, all this, Tom, this is the last comment right now, and we're gonna vote on this. Tom, please.
And the motion is very simple. We have three special meetings we're asking for, May 29th, February 10th, November 11th. We certainly need to have a meeting and to set the superintendent goals. February 10th, I think seems quite reasonable. Sports, I really, and the retirees, and basically this is a cost saving measure. We don't need the attorney at these things that consume a lot of time. That's the reason for it, I think.
Okay. We've heard everybody. We're gonna take this to a
Inaccurate
vote,
information.
and we have a motion on the floor. Ms. Akiri.
What? Hold on.
Can you just
So-
tell us what the motion we're voting on?
The motion that we're voting on right now is Ms. Akiri had made it, seconded by Mrs. Connor, to add the three meeting dates. The February 10th, there is a May 29th, and there is a November 11th date to add to the meeting calendar, which is the one that's here, adding those three dates to that meeting calendar.
So the prior motion amended the first date. This is a motion to add 3 additional dates. Does everyone understand?
Good question.
Sure.
Okay. Cause what are you looking for the November 11th meeting for?
So it is currently any awards to the students, be it sports awards or recognizing a certain team based on how they have won, happens during a regular board meeting. We cannot, I feel like we don't do a good job as a district to recognize these students and the student athletes because we call them to a regular board meeting and we take the time during the superintendent's report. Instead, if we are recognizing students and giving them an award and their parents are here, I think it should be a separate event where as a district and look around our neighboring districts. And we used to do that prior to 2020. So I feel like, and we need to have separate events to recognize teachers, retirees, and students and staff and awards. That's what I'm trying to achieve here.
And how, and I'm just trying to understand all of this. That would be for the fall sports, right? So what about the winter sports and the spring sports? Are you separating them also? Cause that's what I'm trying to understand here. Do they have separate meetings for them too?
So we have 3 special meeting dates. And if we want to do winter, fall, and these 3 meetings can accommodate them. So we have a teacher retiree award thing on May 29th. So I'm asking, in addition to these meetings, add 3 separate meetings. The February 10th is for the superintendent goals. The remaining 2, you can add student recognition awards. We can put some cookies and coffee around and have the parents come here and just recognize those student athletes.
Okay,
I
so
think the answer,
yeah,
the
there's
answer
a lot
to your
of,
question about the winter and spring sports would show up on the 2026 calendar. So it's basically what you're thinking about is for the school year that starts in September 2025, how do you account for the spring or like the winter sports?
no, like
It's November.
winter doesn't end by February 10th. That's one. 2, me and Natasha actually attended
Yes.
the athletic awards for the fall where we presented the award there. So that way we could give the athletes all. And then you saw, right, Mr. Nixon bring the actual award here where we voted upon it. But we had already presented it to them at the fall event, which allowed all of the people that attended the event to be there. That's 1. 2, when you say that we have a special meeting and that in your head, you're saying that means that the attorney will not be there and that's going to save us money. That's just completely inaccurate because the board president and the superintendent have the right to bring the attorney to the meeting. So you can make a special meeting and you don't have much of a choice on whether the attorney attends or not. That's 1. And 2, when we talk about cost savings for attorneys, I like Dave Disler as a person. But that was the most expensive person that returned the RFP, and that's the one you chose. And that was more expensive by almost $40 an hour. So let's be realistic. Let's not make up things. Let's be honest about what our intentions are. Okay. So again, we are adding a November meeting for the fall athletes. We're not adding meetings for the spring and winter. We're adding a meeting on May 29th, and we don't even know if the building's available, right? I just think that all of this can be done between now and the 27th. You can write many, many, many emails, and we can come up with whether or not we want. But right now, I would like to take the vote on this and see even if the majority wants to add more
So
meetings.
I did check. Looks like we did get an email. We did have this sitting in our email, the dates that we are talking about. So maybe you didn't check your email, and that's
Okay,
fine.
we're closing this now. We're going to vote, okay? Everybody spoke their piece. Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
No.
Ms. Torero,
No.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes, except for the November 11th meeting.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley.
No, and just to clarify, it was in the forwarded email. So I would have had to read Dr. Feltry's email and then go through Ms. Akiri's emails.
Thank you
that
for
was
confirming
forwarded.
that you have the email.
Well, it wasn't in the actual email, right? So I would have to
the
go
email
through and
forward.
actually
Well,
click
whatever,
all
I
the
do have the
links.
email.
So let's be
Bradford.
honest.
No.
Motion fails.
And you want to be board president.
Okay, so that brings the conclusion of that. We're going, any more questions on A through O?
Oh, yeah.
I would like to ask, on M, I think right before we came to the meeting, we were shared, so we are approving the manual for procedures. So,
If you don't mind. I did ask for the both manuals. The purchase manual has a bid, not a bid threshold, quotation threshold of $6,600. I thought we changed that in our last meeting in December. There was a new policy that changed it to 3,300. I think Mrs. Jolly can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think the purchase manual still has the old number.
Tom, I
No?
really haven't had an opportunity since the last board meeting to look at stuff.
Yeah.
And having what happened here with
Okay.
this whole thing that's happened.
Yeah.
That has been the last thing on my mind.
Okay, I'm wondering if
So
we
I
could
haven't
just,
even looked at it.
maybe we could just defer. You're
I'll
not,
make a note, I'll change
Yeah.
it, but I just haven't gotten to
yeah,
it.
but this is not an urgent thing, is it, to do M tonight? Is it urgent or necessary, absolutely
I put
necessary?
it on, it's reorganizational stuff. You want to make a little note that says to change it, I'll change it at some point. It's.
no, but I don't think it's mandatory. It's not a mandatory resolution.
It's the same thing as we do with the policies. It's the same thing.
Okay.
That's all.
What?
If you want to go that far, you don't want
No,
to do it,
I'm
then we'll
just,
do it another time.
I'm concerned
I don't
we're
have an
going,
issue with it.
we're going to be
I really don't.
we could be adopting a manual with the wrong number. So how do we get the right number into the manual? Just a minute, I have the floor. If you want to get the floor, you have to raise your hand.
Give me a little
Point of
bit-
order,
can you give me just a little advice?
I think so obviously again, at your traditional organizational means you adopt these, the standard operating procedures and purchase manuals, right? So this way you have it in place. I think if there's a concern that there is a number incorrect in the manual,
Yeah.
I think the motion itself here can be resolved by way of amending it to include the note that it has to comply with the amended policy with the corrected number.
Okay, so I would move to amend item M to say that the purchase manual will reflect the policy on the new policy on quotations with the correct amount,
Specifically, Tom, if I may, policy 6421.
6421, yes.
I'll second that.
That's item M, correct? Item M.
So that's just a motion to amend.
It's M? I thought it was M.
M is the adoption of standard operating
M.
procedures and purchase manuals.
Item M.
Just the motion.
And Ms. Dolly, you were second?
I think Mrs. Security second.
You were second?
6421.
6421. Do we have any other questions on that?
Discussion,
Gail,
Mr. Secretary?
Mrs.
Yes.
Bradford has her hand up.
Yes, our new board members have not had time to look over this. They have not had time to look at policy 641 or 641, 6421, and they have not had time to review any of this. So it would be inappropriate to bring it up at this time because our new board members have not had time to do this.
So what's being brought up is the fact that the policy is in effect, but the manual hasn't been updated to reflect the policy limits. So we're just making an amendment to approve the manual with the I guess essentially with the contingency that the manual be updated to as per policy.
Correct. And our new board members have not had time to review that.
But that's neither here nor there because the policy has a limit and the manual needs to reflect that.
And the new board members need to review that.
But
So- so they
That's
can
not
ch-
making any sense in this context. They have access to the policy manual online, so they can see what the policy is. And this is no different than all of the other items that are on the agenda. Last I checked, we did not get the link to some new policy manual. So in this context, I'm not sure if it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And in any other meeting, Gail, if, I think people are bothered by the way that that was done, but in any other meeting, if a policy was passed on second reading at the last meeting, you could also say new board members wouldn't have had a chance to review. But the policy was adopted at the last board meeting. And this has nothing to do with the policy itself, rather than making sure the manual matches the policy.
My
That's for
discussion
the
point,
administration.
is that we should allow our new board members time.
Does that mean you're asking that we table this entire section because
No,
new board members have
no,
not had
This
the
is
time?
this is my discussion point.
Okay, well, we are voting on the motion here, right? The amended, okay.
Okay, we'll take a vote on this.
Does everyone know what we're voting? It's a motion to amend M to add the contingency to update the manual in accordance with the policy.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
Yes.
Ms. Torero,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley, Mrs. Bradford,
No,
motion passes. Other items for discussion on items A through O?
I'd like to move the resolution A through O to vote, please.
second.
Oh, we have motions here,
We
right?
have the motion already.
Ms.
No, I'm saying I would like to
Yeah.
move the motion to actually take a vote.
And discussion.
Yes.
Okay, seeing that there's none. Mrs. Stanley,
Yes, I'm sorry, the 3 extra dates did not pass, correct? But the 27th did. Okay, and for M 6421 to add that policy addition passed. Okay,
yes, that's.
so I am going to say yes for all except for N. I'm going to say no to policy 6421.
What does that make? Wait a second. That's not really. I think we can do that, but wasn't exactly sure, so that's why I asked. Okay, Mrs. Bradford,
Yes to all except no to N, policy 6421.
Ms. Akiri?
It's yes to all, no to C, and, K.
Okay.
Dr. Forager?
Um, no to C and yes to the rest.
Mrs. Jolly?
I'm gonna say yes to all.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes to all.
Ms. Torero?
Yes to all.
Mr. Dillon?
Yes, to all.
Everything, everything passes. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to
Oh,
adjourn.
no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
We have
Final
new
citizens
business.
hearing.
We have new business.
So we'll start the discussion for the items for new business.
Sure, so if that's okay, I think the first item was mine. Was discussion on the Oprah request. So I think, AJ, you and I had some conversations about Oprah's, but I think this is probably more directed towards Mr. Disler. What is the criteria for an Oprah request submitted to, as an Oprah to the administration to be sent over to the attorneys?
So there is no standard per se. The board has obviously authorized its administration with the ability to contact its attorney as it so believes is in the best interest of the district. So it really relies upon your record custodian and whether they feel they need any assistance with legal counsel, right? So if they're concerned that if their response could lead to a lawsuit or they're unsure under the law how they may need to respond, they typically will reach out to legal counsel. But there's no set standard currently. Currently, the board just gives that discretion to its administration.
Okay, so it's not a legal requirement, it's at the discretion.
Correct.
Okay. So if an Oprah or when an Oprah request is fulfilled, does that mean the Oprah material, that response is now a matter of public record and is public to all?
Yes, except in one scenario that I can think of. So I'm gonna give one caveat to that. So there is one exception when a parent requests records under Oprah for their own child's records. The reason that that is permitted, even though that is technically a student record, it falls under exception on another law. I do not think, though, that even though the board released that under the student record exception for the parent, that then that record would be released unredacted to other parents. It's possible a personnel record possibly could be the same if it released the staff member. I would have to think on that. I haven't seen that situation in a number of years. But for the most part, Oprah records that are released because they're public records. You can Oprah someone's Oprah requests and you can Oprah someone's Oprah documents, technically, yes. So with several caveats, I think the answer to your question is yes.
So previously, so this is kind of coming back to the administration now. So previously, when Oprah requests were fulfilled, the board was copied on the Oprah requests. Now, right now, if we want to see what was Oprah'd, we have to Oprah that, which then in turn goes back to the attorney, which in turn generates fees. And so my request of the administration is that if an Oprah request has been fulfilled, that the full board gets copied on that. So we don't have to go, because there is, unless it's the exceptions that Mr. Disler cited, because there's no reason to generate additional attorney's fees by Oprahing Oprah requests that have already been fulfilled. And this, and I know Mr. Juskowitz said, like, he used to do that. But he said it was a courtesy because Mr. Hopkins used to do that, but I think we should continue that because that will also help us minimize fees. I don't know why something that was already made public needs to go to the attorneys one more time. And then,
Can I just say on this one? So we have been looking at the bills and how much we're spending. So I believe even on today's agenda, we have a board attorney, and I think at last June, we authorized a board attorney and an alternate board attorney. And my understanding for alternate board attorney is if there are any cases that the board attorney cannot advise on, or there are some outliers, then the alternate board attorney gets into action. But what we are seeing is a pattern of every single Oprah is being sent over to these alternate board attorneys. And
No, you're not right about that.
so for us to understand, thanks for clarifying. We didn't know that, but there are a lot of bills for Oprah requests. Now, as Natasha pointed out, and for your answer, that once a district or a public entity releases documents, they're public documents except for student records. So they should be easily accessible either on a district website. We used to put them on district website, I think a couple years ago. Then we stopped that practice. Then the board members,
The district website either.
they were,
Like you said, there were committee meetings, meeting minutes, they were never on a website either. You made those accusations as well, and I'm correcting you again with that as well.
under
We went back and looked, they were never on them.
under
You made
Julie.
those accusations at not one meeting.
I'm not making an
one board
accusation.
Meeting, but at several board meetings, and that's incorrect, and I'm gonna correct you on those.
So I will have to find you and send you
Yes,
the,
please do, because you've made those accusations. We went back and looked, myself and Mr. Dixon, and we never found them. So I'm gonna correct you on those.
so these are not accusations, AJ. So
Well, I'm correcting you because you did make those before, and I have made note of them, and Mr. Dixon and I did go back and look, and we did not find them.
okay, if I may speak without you interrupting.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
My guest, I'm going to correct you when you are not correct.
So the previous BA at one point
Mhm.
was scanning the Oprah responses onto the district website. And our district website has gone through multiple iterations. We used to have an older version, then we moved to the new version. The current version is missing a lot of historical documents. And I did bring this to Dr. Feltry's attention. We're missing a lot of meeting minutes. We're missing attachments. Our district YouTube channel is missing a lot of activities. So I will have to find you that particular meeting, and I'll have to get you, maybe I'll have to go back to, I think, a Wayback Machine or something to get you those information. But some of the Oprah requests back, I think during the pandemic time, were put on the district website. Irrespective of that, the point I'm trying to make here is, if once documents have been released to public and they're not student records, these are public documents. And if we are, as elected board members, we would like to see the documents that are being released, I think they should be given to us without an additional charge of routing them through the board attorney. That's the point Natasha is trying to make.
And I think there's other points that need to be made as well. He has an opinion. The attorney that we use has an opinion, just as Mr. Lewis has an opinion. And I also have the New Jersey School Boards Association has an opinion. I also have the people that I took the classes, which you also had me take, have a different opinion as well. So there's many different opinions that everybody has when it comes to some of these Oprahs and releasing some of that public information before you give it to someone else, because of, I know that Mr. Disler said those two things, but everybody has varying degrees on what those are. And 6 different people, or I should say attorneys, have varying degrees on those as well. So with having all that exposure, which I've had to listen to and ask about several different people, there's varying degrees of what you should and shouldn't do. So you get a lot of mixture of things. I know you're getting his opinion. You may like his opinion, but I get different opinions from everybody else, and I err on the side of caution due to the fact of I'm trying to protect the board on certain issues. And if I go willy-nilly and releasing everything all the time, okay, well, you know what? I'm exposing this district to a lot of different things. So I take a conservative approach to a lot of different things. If you think I should do that, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I would just like to,
Sorry, I have my hand up.
Mm.
Can I ask a quick question in this context? Have you received any guidance from any attorney that says you should not be copying board members on all of the Oprah requests that are responded to? Like has somebody said, nope, don't copy them anymore.
Well, I had the big discussion with the county office and said that we shouldn't be doing it. It's not part of our job to do so. And it probably would create more of a controversy than anything else.
Sorry, it's not a part of your job to copy board members on,
It shouldn't be done.
it should or should not?
Should not be done.
Also, just because we have new administrators, I would like to comment that previous administrators were copying board members. I'm not sure how it started or why it started. I think it was mostly just to show how much was coming through. But it was removed because the administration felt that after it went to board members, they were getting Oprah requests for things that were in that Oprah. So they felt that board members were going to people in the public and telling them what to Oprah from that Oprah request. So the administration decided that that was not appropriate and it was bringing more work, unnecessary work. So the administration knows that that is part of the discussion in previous meetings. So it might be something you want to take into consideration with this request.
So maybe if you don't want to copy, what I don't want to do is if something is of a public record, to have to ask for it and then have it generate additional attorney's fees by going back to the attorney to only get that very same information that was already released. That makes no sense. So if you're not comfortable copying, but if we ask
Well,
for
I'm
something
comfortable.
based.
I have to generate all my Oprahs that someone's asking me for from January all the way to December 10th, then there's a whole different story.
Just so I understand, the point or the question that I have in mind is, what is the additional work other than adding email addresses when you respond back with the response to that, Oprah request? I guess I'm not understanding the matter
More
of,
time it generates of all the questions that are generated from it. That's the other thing. I have a job to do and it generates more. It's bad enough to have more of these Oprahs to do than necessary.
you're
But it's
saying
the other
the
the questions that generated from it.
the
Mhm.
questions, so you're saying if you were to copy board members on the response back that you send to whoever is sending the Oprah request, your point is, if you copy board members, you get questions back from the board members and that's a burden to answer those questions? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing?
exactly.
That's an interesting take on why you can't copy board members on responses that you're sending out via email. It's a matter of just adding email addresses, so I don't understand the burden here.
And it's part of the job of the administrator, and we have additional assistants. So if we have one-off question on, hey, can you give us supporting information on this? Instead of generating time, or I think it's part of the job role, because as a business administrator, you're also the district Oprah custodian and you have enough support. But
Well-
thanks for explaining.
No, but I mean, at the end of the day, if I see something when I'm checking bills, right, and there are these Oprah requests, I'll put in my Oprah, it'll go back to the attorneys, I'll get the same information, and if there were questions, I would still ask them, irrespective of whether you copied me on it initially or whether I get it via this, roundabout process. So I don't think we're saving anything here, and we're just generating attorney's fees.
Can I ask a question? Because I'll be honest with you, I've never opened an Oprah request in my life. Just to get a general idea, what kind of numbers are we getting in terms of Oprah requests? When we're talking about these bills, I mean, are we talking about, and what's a normal Oprah number? And are we getting them from the same people repetitively?
Let's see, last year about 125.
And is that a normal number?
Last district I was in, I probably get 5 a year there.
That's
Every place is
mind
different.
blowing.
125 Oprah requests?
I'm starting to put yours together. What you asked me for was a list. I got the list together and I'm starting to put it together. So
So the list should just be everything that was submitted to you via email. I'm not asking for the actual even responses. I just wanted to know what were the Oprahs that were asked. So that's just a list.
So can I ask another question? The Oprahs that are coming in, are some of these things reasonable requests? Are they things that could go on a website, or is it I'm just trying to kind of understand some of this
Well,
because,
I'm gonna say, if there are conversations that are between individuals in the district, administrators, um, administrators, board members, staff, and some of those are generated at a rate between 50 to 450. I don't know. I'd have to ask legal advice on that one.
I mean, that's mind blowing that we have that many Oprah requests if normal is like under 10.
So I can't access it now, but I had put a spreadsheet together based on the legal bills from Bush Law Firm, which kind of not detail, but like they cite what the Oprah request that's been asked. There weren't 125 Oprah requests.
As AJ has said, he doesn't always send every Oprah request to the law
When a
firm.
request has 2 to 3 or 5 different things in it, I see that as a separate request. So if you're sending me one Oprah request that has 5 or 6 different things that it's asking for, I don't see that as one request. I see that as a multiple request. So you have to look at it in different terms.
And what kind of time frame does it take you to actually fulfill an Oprah request?
Everything is all different. I mean, you have to look at what it's asking for. You have to run a filter of what it's asking for. And once the filter is run, then you have to see what it entails.
So is there a way
I mean,
as a board
something can be
that
simple.
we can come up with something so that these numbers, because it obviously is costing our district a ton of money because it's taking AJ's time and it's obviously going to the
It
attorney.
hasn't only happened with me. It happened with everybody else before me, and it'll happen with everybody.
So is there
thereafter.
something, and
So-
like I said, I'm kind of new here. Is there something that we can do to try to alleviate some of that? What is the problem? Why are we what is triggering this number of requests? Because
I
that's
can't answer that question.
mind blowing to me that we have such a large number of requests. That's staggering.
So AJ, when you can, and if you can send us the list of the actual asks, not the resulting information, but the actual list of asks. And some of them, Adept, to answer your question, are duplicates because in order for me to get that list, I actually had to send an Oprah request. So
Everybody loves us.
Sorry, I just was trying to understand.
So just to give you an example, the transportation consultants presentation from the previous year, I asked for it. I asked at a board meeting, I was told I'm going to get it. Then I followed up in an email and then I was told, no, it's not going to, it's getting changed. I said, no, I'm not asking for the new one. I'm asking for the transportation consultants report that was submitted in 2023. It was multiple emails. I didn't get it. So I had to put an Oprah request and it was denied. So stuff like that.
That's one.
Yeah, that's
You follow what
one.
I'm saying? That's one.
But there are,
And I personally feel, right, that's a problem, right? Like board members really shouldn't be putting in Oprah requests, right? We have the most access to the district and the board and the transparency, right? So this idea that we need every document is baffling to me, because I don't even know why we need to know how many, fine, but why do I need to know what is being Oprah'd, right? If I can have a conversation with AJ and say, well, what can we do to try to alleviate this, right? And one of the things that people said is put the minutes up. Well, now we put minutes up, we put lots of information in the minutes, and we're still getting Oprah requests, right? For the details of the minutes and what behind the minutes, and if there was any emails about the minutes about the meeting prior to the meeting, right? Like, that's what I'm saying is people are saying like, oh, well, if we do this, right, it will alleviate it. But some people just want to see every document, right? I know that there have been times where people just say, I want to see all of Pam's emails from this time to this time, right? So we are trying our best to alleviate some of this. One of the best things we can do is communicate, not just the administration, but the board members, right? Board members, it's your job to give accurate information and to give information about the district. That will help alleviate some of this, right? Some of this idea that we need to find out all this and we need to have all these documents. The reality is yes, right? We have Oprah for a reason, right? But there's also abuse of Oprah, and NJSBA has said that what is going on in our district is pretty much abuse of Oprah. Because, right, it's repetitive, it's digging deep, right? The point of Oprah is that since we're a public entity, right, is that if there's a document, right, that we don't get on the website, we can Oprah it and see it, right? But usually that's one person asking for one document, not a big group asking for every document the district has, right? So usually there's a reason why you Oprah something, and it's usually one parent with one issue who is trying to find a document, not, right, I want to see every email that Pamela Stanley wrote. So we're dealing with a big issue, and it's a lot on the administration, right? Once this Oprah comes in, not only do you have to find all these things, which means they have to work with the tech team usually to find these things, but then you have to go through, right, each and every one. And if they miss one email, right, we could be sued, right? So this is not, right, like something that they can take lightly. They have to go through every email and get rid of every name and every phone number and every email address, right? And so it's time consuming.
May I make a request just on this topic? And Dr. Feltry, when you have a minute, is it possible for you to maybe take a look at how we run the process in the district? If there's anything different, better that can be done that can alleviate some of the costs associated with our Oprah request right now, that's perhaps one way to deal with it. Just fresh eyes, new experience, kind of something different that could help us. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I have a comment also. The issue is communication and transparency. And our board has access to the administration. Being able to use that access to the administration is what we need to do, and to communicate with the administration. We have a new administration now, a lot of new people at the top, that can be rectified and Oprahs can be reduced among board members. But we have the most access to our administration for this.
So Gail, I wasn't going to bring this one up, but let me ask you this. So when there was certain information that was provided to tap into via email regarding unpaid bills, I made the correction saying, this doesn't look right. And I laid out every single item that didn't look right. I asked for the email that was shared with Tap Into, a public publication that was used to publish a public article. No one on that email chain, including yourself, would forward me the email because I wanted to understand, I wanted to see what information was provided that they were putting into that article. I had to Oprah that email because you wouldn't send it to me and others on the email would not send it to me. So yes, I have the access. It's really comes down to a question of response.
Just want to make sure the meeting's live.
The meeting has been, I think the Zoom,
Looks
Gone
like,
too
it
long.
looks like it's still going
Disconnected.
here. Okay, just making sure. Sorry.
so to reiterate Natasha's point, yes, we have access to the administration, and trust is a two-way street. If a board member wants to see a document or asks for information, and if we are just stonewalled and there is no response after multiple emails, I think we are forced to put an Oprah. It's not about we have access as board members, we can pick up the phone or we can ask them. Yes, we have tried. We have asked in person, we've asked via email, and when we don't get it, I think it's a process of working together, changing our approach to, are we going to be open and transparent about sharing these documents with the board members? That's
And
about
we
it.
have a
Thank you.
new organization and a new year to begin and 2 new board members.
I'm gonna hate myself for asking a question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. I'm curious about the purpose and the intention of new business here at this board. So I was tracking along really well. Ms. Jolly, it was an excellent point around why are we paying for attorneys to give the board members Oprah documents which are already shared with the public. I was with you all along, and yeah, let's not pay attorneys to do that. And then about 30 minutes went on, and there was a lot of talk that really didn't involve that. So when we do new business, is it a brainstorming session? Is that how we're operating here? Or is it something, is there a specific ask? Is it a motion? I'm confused about what just happened in the last few minutes. And looking at the next one, discussion on another policy, and I just could see this going in any direction. So honestly, I'm just trying to fit in here at the moment. So when we talk new business, are we directing a specific question? I think where you started, right? Or is it intended to just share ideas and get it out there?
So there are instances where new business will lead to a motion for action.
Okay.
And there are some discussion topics that can lead to action in subsequent meetings. So when, so that it's not, I guess, brand new. So it's kind of like a lead into something that
Okay.
will happen or may
So
happen.
the intention of your request and putting it on here was probably to confirm that we are paying attorneys.
Well, I know we
twice
are,
for the
right?
same
So,
item.
right. So I just wanted to understand why,
Okay.
was it like a legal requirement that we send everything? And Mr. Disler answered, no, it's at the discretion, right? I wanted to understand if once publicly released, like, why do I need to Oprah that information that has already been publicly released?
But I mean, a lot of that has already been done in email.
Right, and Mr. Juskowitz did respond to me, and I'm following up on his response with the board attorney. Because I cannot email the board attorney. Okay, so are
Next item.
we okay
Yeah,
to move
I
on?
don't, just listening. I don't,
So,
doesn't seem like there's any action or request or questions here.
yeah, so I think the outcome of this discussion was for Dr. Felcher to take a look at our current process, right? To see if we can streamline anything with respect to the attorney costs.
Specific to
Oprah
Oprah
request.
requests.
Specific to the
Oprah
Oprah process.
requests that
Specific,
are coming, that are generated through the board.
no. My request right now is if Dr. Feltry can take a look at the way the district is handling the Oprah process, doesn't matter where the request is
Got it,
coming
okay.
from, right? And look for ways that we can do it better without, the loop that we have on the attorney side, where they will review something that they have already reviewed, things of that nature. So I'm just asking her to review it and see if we can do better. So one of the consequences or one of the actions coming out of the new business conversation could be an action like this, or it could be something that goes back to a committee for further discussion. So it's sort of multiple ways that we use the new business item to, have.
Yeah, I think if we could just get to the point, let's just get to the point, right? It could have just started off with, hey, you're new here. Here's a concern. Can we evaluate? In your board goals, can you evaluate the money we're spending on lawyer costs for Oprah? And that would have been the end of it, right?
So just to say, the new business items on today's agenda were not supposed to be on the new business agenda for today, Bill. In all fairness, these were new business items from the December meeting. We were
Carried over.
carried over.
Got
We had to adjourn. So we did not intend to have these at the reorg meeting.
I think what he's saying is still true though, right? Like we got to ask a question and then move forward. But we have to remember we're a board, right? So just because one board member wants something doesn't mean the entire board does. And that's kind of, right, the point of a board is that you got to work together, right? And I heard that some people are having a hard time even working with the administration. And that, right, is the point of a board member. A board member's point is to support and help the district and the administrators and work with other board members in order to make that happen. Can we move on to further discussion so we can move through new business?
Sure. So the next one's mine too, and I will kind of try to make this quick. This is a precursor. I know we abolished policy 131 at the last meeting. My intention at the next regular meeting, right, is to bring it back. However, I do want to take a look at the language, and of course, everything will be shared with the board, the old version, and potentially the, some tightening of the verbiage, because when I reread it, the actual procedure embedded in policy 131 in terms of the steps the policy goes through to get to a board vote are not exactly clear. So, and I realize we do need policy 131. I'm in favor of first and second readings. However, this policy, does need to be reviewed. So this was just to let the board know of my intention and that you'll be receiving, some correspondence from me. And I look forward to your feedback.
So shouldn't that go to policy committee?
Right. However, I don't know when we will have a board president. I don't know when we'll have a policy committee. And currently, even with policy committee, right, without policy 131, you don't have a process to take it to policy committee.
So that's what I'm saying is we don't even really need it until we have a policy committee because you're not going to have a policy come to the board until we have a policy committee. So that's my comment on that. But yes. Okay, so then can we move forward with policy?
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this. Whenever the board wants a committee to review something, the right thing is actually not to automatically refer it to, automatically have a committee take a look at it. The right thing is for the board to say, how do we want to deal with this? Do we want the policy committee to look at it? Do we want curriculum to look at it? Whatever. And actually have a motion, this is provided in Robert's rules, to refer the matter to a specific committee with instructions. So that's the way it should be done. And if they want policy 131 or any policy for that matter to be reviewed by the policy committee, that should really take a motion to refer with instructions. It's not, I don't think it should be automatic.
Also, my comment on, just because we don't have a president or a committee doesn't prevent the elected board members to discuss policies. There are multiple boards in our state and in this country which operate as a board as a whole. So if the process is going to take as long as it took last year, and if we have to discuss policies or bylaws, we can definitely discuss them. And I think this is the venue. And to answer to Bill's point about why are we discussing this at new business, we are actually authorizing to pay public taxpayer dollars for a lot of these Oprah requests and legal bills. And having a discussion via email is okay, but then if there is no clear communication from the district on why we are spending these hundreds of thousands of dollars on, repetitive bill payments.
We're on
It's-
policy 131.
Yes, so I think it is, again, the chair of the meeting, if you can please advise on how to conduct the meeting. I think I had the floor, and instead of interrupting, maybe give the person the chance to finish. So that is the reason why we discuss them here. So just because we don't have a policy committee, I don't think it's going to prevent this board about bringing up policies to be voted on at the next meeting or any regular meeting. Thank you.
So what it sounds like is that we have some board members who think that we should have one board member writing a policy, sharing it with the full board for a vote at a meeting, where that's not how most boards do that stuff, right? They have a policy committee that has multiple board members, and then you also have the superintendent, right, in that meeting, right? Because you're supposed to be working with the district, even in policy, right, to move things forward. And we saw at our last meeting that we had the acting superintendent actually asked to remove his name from the agenda item. And that means that we were not working with the administration. So I believe that that is why we can discuss policies. I don't think it's the appropriate way to handle it. So I will say that we should move this to a committee where you have multiple people looking at this, and then they bring it to the board for a full vote, because that's how committees work, and we're a board of committees. So again, I just think this is not necessary tonight for policy 131 when we don't have a board president or committees at this time to even bring policies.
Well, this was just a discussion. I'm not making any motions or anything, so,
I look forward to getting your policy 131. Thank you.
I'll
Thank
send
you.
out my own policy 131
Yeah,
then.
and
I
then
mean,
we
like, that's,
collaborate.
right, that's not productive. And the whole point, right, of having a governance is that we need to be a more productive board, right? We can see tonight's meeting was not very
I
productive.
think we heard that the
Right,
5th
so-
time now.
I know, which is so sad that the 5th time I have to say this is not, right? It's not productive. We're just sitting here
Well,
not accomplishing something. And I can tell you, I just went around as a candidate and I can tell you people are so frustrated. They are so frustrated because their kids are sitting in a building with no heat and you guys are talking about,
Point of order, can we finish the new business? I mean, we've
oh,
already.
points of order. No one seconded. The chair didn't recognize
We've-
you. Great. So listen, right? You cannot hold me accountable in one way and you in another, right? You're saying I talk over people, but then you're talking over me. So what I'm trying to say is we need to move forward and get something done tonight. So can we move to policy 164?
right, and I think I'll make everyone happy with that one. I think it was actually a misunderstanding between Dr. Felcher and myself. I was citing policy 164 as a 48-hour rule when I wanted to add 131, and I asked how Mr. Arrow would get it. Mr. Dillon was not named yet, so I didn't know how he would receive the 48-hour notice, so there's nothing to discuss here.
All the rest are from Ms. Akiri.
Yeah, so I think I have brought this up previously. I just wanted to discuss, we have a board policy on when the board agenda packet will be delivered to the board and how much time will we have to review it. And we, the board, have policy 164 where we are bound by this 48-hour requirement. If we want to discuss anything at the board meeting, we need to let the board and the administration and everybody know what we want to discuss about. But what we have been seeing is the board agendas, the draft board agendas have off late. Initially, they used to come for a Thursday meeting the Thursday before. So if it was next Thursday, we would get them this Thursday. Then slowly they started coming on a Saturday, then they were coming on a Sunday afternoon. We have, I don't know about the rest of the board members, but we have day jobs and there is a draft agenda coming to us on a weekend, and then we review the draft agenda, we ask questions, we ask for supporting information or attachments. Sometimes the draft agenda doesn't have attachments. And when we finalize on, okay, this is everything that we have as of Wednesday, then Thursday, the day of the meeting, 2 hours or 3 hours before the board meeting, there is a whole bunch of revisions that are made, the numbering changes, and sometimes changes are made in the last 1 hour to the board meeting where we have to go into exec, so we wouldn't have even had a chance to look at them. So I have discussed this with Dr. Feltry one-on-one. I hope everybody here will agree that giving us, if the board members are held to a certain standard of 48-hour advance notice, unless until it is an emergency situation, it's a security or a health or a professional related situation where we have to act on, my request is make the changes before 48 hours to the agenda packet and share it with us along with attachments so that we do not have to generate emails asking, hey, can you give us more additional information on this? Thank you.
I think a lot of that information was just quite frankly inaccurate and knowingly so. But I would also like to comment that I want AJ working on how to fix the heat. I don't want him working on a list of Oprahs. I don't want him working on getting things done 48 hours, 72 hours. Most of us had the agenda last Friday, if not earlier. So I just, let's focus on what's important to the students and our staff. Our staff is like, I'm freezing and our staff is here all day in this, right? And it's freezing. I want him focused on the things that matter to our students. That's it.
So,
Also,
I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting after Gail.
no, I just need to,
I'd like to make a motion for less light and more heat.
so just to clarify, the record is with the business administrator and with the administration to see, I'm not talking about this year's agenda packet. I'm talking about the last 10 board agenda packets. The delivery date is on the emails for the draft agendas. and how many revisions have taken place. Every single board meeting we sit at, we get a blue colored packet. And it is for somebody to throw out an allegation that this is all inaccurate information. I would like the administration to answer and tell me, have changes been made to every single board agenda 2 to 3 hours before the meeting? And it's factual information. It doesn't, you can just throw an allegation, but it's factual stuff. If you want a detailed report, I can bring it at the next meeting.
Gail has
The
her hand up.
administration has the right to change an agenda due to what may happen between the time the draft agenda comes out and the board meeting takes place. I do not want to withdraw that from the administration.
Also, let's again be accurate what the blue pamphlet means, right? The blue pamphlet tonight was changed because we didn't have Bill's name yet, right? The one of the last meetings, the blue packet was there because we had to change the date on one of the items, right? Like some of this is just normal stuff that has to be done, and saying otherwise publicly is giving misinformation, right? And I have no problem with you saying, can I please get the packet a little earlier? Can we try to be a little bit more concerned with last minute changes? That's a normal request. Demanding and saying you're doing all this wrong and you always give it so late and whatever, all the blue packets happen because things happen, right? We had to wait for Bill's name. That's it.
I just want to ask a question here because I wasn't part of this in the past. The changes that are being made to these agendas, are they minor changes that if you're sending updates, can you maybe put in the email, these specific items were modified for this reason, or can they be tracked, or is there some way to draw the eye to that location on the agenda so people don't feel like they have to do the guesswork of figuring out what's
They already do.
Because that's what I'm guessing you're saying. I mean, I have
No,
no
that's
idea.
not. I can pull together a report of what I'm talking about. When we do get a revised agenda, we do get bolded items saying these were the agendas added, these agenda items were added, or these were removed.
Dr. Florida.
Yeah, I'm now appreciating very much how the township committee modifies their agenda. They don't actually come out with what I call an integrated agenda. They will have a separate sheet for that meeting, agenda changes, and it will say the following items are pulled or the following items are added. It makes very easy to see what are the changes. When you sort of stick it into a long list, A through M, and you stick in a new item and you shift all of the items below it, that creates problems for me. So I kind of prefer the township method of just put out an addendum.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe, I know that's
Yeah.
happened a lot on the personnel side. I know
Yeah.
that Ms. Azalone does send out an email explaining what changes have been made, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So it does, it is clear that if there are changes,
Yeah.
there's an email that explains what changes have been made.
All right. Okay. Now, okay, I thought we were going to talk about policy 164. Are we not going to do that? Okay, it's on there. Okay. Sorry, there was something else I was going to bring up, but I'll skip it because I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe I'll come back to it.
Ms. Khanna?
I just want to go back to what are we trying to achieve in this conversation is to make sure that as a board, we have enough time to review, especially those agendas that have multiple items or that need more time to go through just the supporting material. So Dr. Feltry, I'm looking for, your point of view on, would you say that we could establish a protocol that the board would get 80% of the agenda finalized by Friday, 4 p.m.? Something that gives us enough time over the weekend to go through the material that we need and be prepared for the meeting. I understand things change. That's kind of, how it is. But if you can, give us your recommendation on, or give us your point of view that we will have as an administration come out with the agenda X days before the meeting so that we know what to expect instead of kind of like guessing here.
Okay, so respectfully, this is my first meeting and I do need a couple of times to be able to see what the process is, what types of changes are made. I can tell you, in my last district, we had Monday night meetings. The agenda went out on Friday. So I thought I was doing good, releasing a draft on Thursday and then releasing the final on Friday. And you had enough time. If we can stick to releasing a draft on Thursday, getting and a final on Friday, you almost have a whole week, which I think will be enough time. In speaking with Mrs. Azalone, the changes that are made are often personnel. It's 6 weeks in between some of your board meetings to not have a vacancy filled, which is challenging in a whole bunch of different ways and really not good for students. But yes, I can commit to evaluating the processes, but I'm asking for a little bit of grace or a lot of grace and a little bit of patience or a lot of patience so that I have an opportunity to actually have a chance to see how the process is done.
Thank you. And see, that was another reason why we wanted more meetings, because right now our meetings are almost 6 weeks apart and we don't have much time. Also, I think along the delivery, I think I basically said delivery timeline for agenda packets. Of late, we've started seeing attachments not being sent, which was the historical precedent. We used to get PDF attachments for all agendas and attachments. Now we get Google document links. And with missing documents on our district website, my only concern is document retention, and can we just stick to our historical precedent of giving us PDF attachments? That way it's easy to search for us in the email. I think the next item is on separate conference session board meetings. We already discussed that for student, teacher, and staff recognition events in 2025 and 2026. I wanted to talk about process for procuring software, hardware, and systems for facilities. For example, the Raptor Visitor System. The way this particular software and hardware requisition came about was it was put on an agenda for a facilities and finance committee. And the contract was not attached, I believe. So we approved it. We had some questions. It was, I think we paid for it from last June onwards, if I'm not. Yes. And we haven't used it, this Raptor Visitor System, for 6 months because there were a lot of open questions. So it was a recommendation. It did not come. It was a technical software and a hardware upgrade to our district, but it wasn't on the technology committee. It went to finance and facilities, and we saw it on the agenda after the finance and facilities committee discussed it in their committee. And when we asked the questions, we said, we got some answers, and they said, we will get back to you before it's fully implemented. So we paid for this vendor. None of the board members were able to look at the contract terms and conditions for this software. It's a private company. And when you go and when the bills came in and when we finally looked at the fine print, the terms and conditions are on a link and a URL hosted by the company. And when you click on that link, it says that it's an automatic renewal for this visitor system with a 5% increase. So my biggest concern is any software that we buy or any contract that we engage into as a publicly funded school district, it should not be a URL. It should be an actual set of terms and conditions, which was missing. So I just hope in future, if we are going to get into any contracts like this, the board is involved. And before we continue, I want to get legal advice on this particular contract with this vendor, because it says it's an automatic renewal. What if we want to, it doesn't stipulate how many days advance notice we have to give. And stuff like that.
So before you answer, Mr. Gisler, just a couple of things, because I did read the contract. Having the link to policies and terms, right? Those policies and terms can change at any time. So when we see that document, does not work, right? And then the automatic renewal contract, the 5% is a minimum. So, given that we're capped at 2%, it just was a little, interesting that we signed a contract for a 5% increase annually.
And I think we're also obligating future boards if it's an automatic renewal with ambiguous, unknown terms and conditions.
So I'll be frank, I've not reviewed the contract. I have not reviewed terms and conditions. Traditionally speaking, you cannot have an unlimited automatic renewal. There's just limitations on a typical provision. Now, I don't know if it's automatic renewal pending approval. I don't know if it's automatic renewal, but there's a termination provision that's a 30-day clause out. I just haven't reviewed it. I assume it's not an indefinite contract. I assume there has to be some ability for the board to opt out of it. It's hard for me to answer in a vacuum without actually reviewing it. I will say, just being frank, for some of these larger tech companies, it can sometimes be a take it or leave it. So negotiations with them is not always easy. I've had the discussion with, I think is the concern, Mr. Kira and Ms. Jolly, which is, well, it's a link. They can change that link at any time. And I shared that concern. And sometimes they say, okay, we'll set it in stone. And most of the time they say it's a take it or leave it, just because we're not changing it for individual school districts. But I guess to get back to the original question, it's hard for me to answer in a vacuum without actually going
You
through all
don't,
of the
no,
terms.
I wanted to discuss this with you. I realized this when I went to review the bills in December. And I will forward what we saw to the superintendent and have her forward it to you. So if you can review it, because I believe as a board, we cannot obligate future boards to an automatic renewal and the minimum 5%. So what is the maximum? So will they, if this board approved it last year for 1 year, and then coming next year, they say, we're going to increase your fees by 15%. They should limit the minimum to maximum range so that we know what we are signing up for and for how long. So once you review it, if you can get back to us at the next meeting, that would be great.
So,
Not a problem again.
But
Yeah.
my thing is like, we're saying that we don't want to spend money on attorney fees, but then we're like, let's send this whole contract to the attorney for something that we know we need, right? And we're a full board. So again, we can't have 2 board members telling us we must use the attorney fee. So I understand the questions, but I think a lot of this just can be emails. And I think a lot of this has already been in emails, but I'd like to make a motion to adjourn for tonight.
Can I at least, because I was going to finish the point that I think would address yours. So again, it's within obviously your administration discretion to send it to me. I would also make a recommendation if some of these questions could be probably answered by the rep, right? So most of these services have a representative for each individual, like a sales rep. They may be able to tell you, here's how to get out of it. Here's where the automatic renewal. And a lot of times they send you the price before agreeing to move forward. So that just might be a way to streamline it.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
You had
Aye.
business in the list beyond new business. We never talked about what that means.
Just kind of couldn't hear you. Say that again.
I'm looking at the agenda. There's old business that follows new business. Are there any items on old business that as a board, we need to discuss before we adjourn? I mean, I don't know the reason why you have it here, if there was a specific reason.
Just was on there from last year. I don't know. I don't have anything on there. Just was open and that's it.
So what,
That's the regular, there's a prescribed list of items for meetings, and that's one of them. Whether there's anything To do under.
There's no particular meaning to it. So I have a motion on the floor.
It's just part of the template.
I have a motion on the floor.
So we had discussion, as part of, before you vote, the discussion is what happens to the remaining items? Do they get carried over to the next meeting? As long as they're getting carried over to the next meeting.
What remaining
As-
item? I don't even see a remaining item, but
Yeah, on the Raptor visitor system.
I thought we already talked about the Raptor visitor
No.
system. And most of these things have already been talked about in public session and they could be in an email. Like I don't. But again, there's a motion on the floor.
So I'm okay to adjourn as long as they get moved over to the next meeting. If the administration is fine with moving these items that we, yeah.
Looks like they would come up under old business.
Yes. But I just need a confirmation, yeah.
What does everybody want to do? Do they want to conclude this and be done with it? So they're not on for the next meeting, or would they like to put them on for the next meeting?
Are we talking about is it legally permissible, those two items? Is that the only two we're talking about? Because I think that has been answered as yes, it's legally permissible.
So the procurement process, I think I wanted to understand is before, so they get discussed in a committee, but the contract terms were not shared with the Finance and Facility Committee. And then the board never saw the terms and conditions before it was put to vote for
May-
us.
May I ask a question? We had this discussion in September, and we also had it in, was it October and November? The same thing came up, and I remember you asking me both those board meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
And the tech committee had a
So
whole
it
meeting.
is, the
I'm
answer,
just, can you answer my question? Did we not speak at those two meetings, September and October, when you brought this up? And I know I explained it, and I know Mr. Marks had also explained it. So that's all I'm asking.
so
Was
that's.
it not explained?
No,
That's all I'm asking.
my question is, in future, are we going to still continue the old process where you will not share the contract with the entire board? Are we going to continue the same process, or are we going to change based on this lessons learned?
Point of order, personnel.
What is personnel? I'm asking about procurement services for softwares and hardwares. In future, is the board going to see the terms and conditions for a contract? Will they be shared ahead of time proactively, or are we going to follow the same process as last year? This question was never asked.
Well, I don't know if what you discussed in your committee, and that was brought up in that committee, and if I'm not mistaken, there was an answer given that committee.
No, I
Was
didn't
it?
ask about how are we going to approve contracts for softwares and hardwares. We discussed about the legality part of it, and they said there has to be some policy change. I'm saying for this year, 2025, if there is any recommendation to buy any softwares and hardwares and the terms and conditions before the item gets put on the agenda for the board vote, and you as the board administrator signs the contract after the board vote, will we get to see the terms and conditions ahead of time? It's a yes or a no.
I'm going to defer that to the superintendent.
I have a motion on the table, board secretary.
So
Can we vote upon the motion? Because I'm not sure the whole board actually wants to have this discussion, right?
So I have.
And I have a motion on the table that's open.
Well,
So
and that's why I was trying to determine if we wanted to finish this or bring this up the next meeting. That's why I was asking,
I think
trying to get a
according
poll
to
of the
So
board at this point.
let's take a poll because, let's take a vote because it looks like we can't say an aye for this one because we're just getting.
So what is our 164? We just talked about it. We give 48-hour notice. We don't discuss them. They get moved out of courtesy to the next board meeting, and then they keep getting moved over. And then we are asked to make a decision on, hey, we can't discuss this at this meeting. Technically, any new business that's left over, Dr. Feltry, should be old business at the next meeting. So are we limiting public discussion on how we are going to spend public taxpayer dollars?
So this is not public discussion, that we're in the middle of a board meeting, but there is a motion on the table. So if you want to say technically, right, technically, we're supposed to be voting on the motion on the table and you're going on discussion about it, about some
I am
agenda
okay.
item, which I get that you want to talk about this, but I'm not sure the full board does. So again, there's a motion on the table. I would like a vote.
So my question to Dr. Feltry is the discussion to adjourn the meeting. I'm fine with adjourning the meeting as long as these unanswered questions are either answered or put on next meeting's agenda.
I'd love to have a conversation with this. I do have to admit, I'm wrestling with how some of this isn't a conversation that we would have had versus a new business conversation. So, I'm struggling with that a little bit. I'll be honest.
So I think there is a motion on the table to be voted on. If the board does not finish new business, I think it would get moved to old business. But if in the meantime, the board member who has the concerns has a discussion with the administration, I think that board member has the ability to either notify the full board and the administration that they have been, it's been discussed, they're satisfied with the answer, and ask that it be removed from the agenda.
But I mean, I'm just gonna, right?
Please.
So we have answered these questions, right? So that's the point, right? Is every time I have a question, I'm just gonna put out an email saying I want it on new business and demand that the administration talk about it in public. Like that's where we're running into like really weird situation here, because that's really not what new business is supposed to be used for, right? To Bill's point is, right, like,
So
because of OPMA, we have, if we have any full discussion as a board, right, it has to be done in public, but this doesn't need to be a full discussion of a board. If a board member has a question, they should be working with the administration. That's a board member's job to work with the administration. It's not the board's job to spend an hour talking about everyone's questions, right? That's what I'm getting at. But yes, I have a motion on the table to adjourn. Can we please vote on that? And I would ask that the board member sit down with Dr. Feltry, give Dr. Feltry a chance to get to know the district so we can even see what she wants to do. Maybe she has some really great ideas of how to get the agenda out to us. And we haven't even let her do that, right? So let's let her do her thing, right? Let's support her, right? She's great. She's wonderful. She already told me about these emails that she wants to send out, the board buzz, right? So let's give her a chance to do what she wants to do, and then we can give constructive criticism, right? That's the point of the board, instead of just saying we want all this day one, right? So again, can we please adjourn the meeting? I'm very cold, please. Let's take a vote, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I just want to say I'm okay with adjourning the meeting as long as the questions are answered either in an email. That would be perfectly fine with me. Future contracts will be reviewed with the board, supporting information. The ambiguous terms and conditions will be reviewed by the board attorney, and then we'll get some resolution on that. That's about it. Otherwise, I think, as Mr. Disler said, they will get added to old business at the next meeting. Thank you.
But are they, because did you get through it all or no?
No.
No,
So
Which ones are still to go?
it's from the process for procuring software and down, if I'm not mistaken. Are we in agreement from there down? That-
yes.
So
For the last two?
Yeah, but the last two we did talk about, and we said that
I'm
you
just
have
trying to be clear.
you have gotten that answer.
These 4 bullet items are being deferred then to.
No,
I'm sorry.
We could not
Mr.
discuss.
Chairman, are
the meeting's adjourned though.
Are the 4 bullet items being deferred to old business next?
I think that's what, AJ, I think we're asking you a question. The 4 items.
Well, that's what I just said.
Okay, okay,
Old business
That's what
next time.
will be.
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we just invested time in some of them, right?
What?
They've been answered before.
What's your question?
I'm here listening. We reviewed software.
I don't mean, I don't mean to cut you off. If we're going to have the discussion, we can't do it as a closed meeting because that would be an open violation. So I'd ask someone a motion to reopen the discussion just because.
It's
What-
anarchy here.
What was the result of the vote on adjournment?
There were no nays.
Oh,
So the meeting's closed, and that's why I just don't want to avoid. The meeting's adjourned, so I don't want to avoid a hidden open issue.
Let me have your signed ethics form.
I
just.
I thought I gave them.
Power that we're listening. Seems like I was listening to a different
Yeah.
conversation. Everybody else
Yeah.
was taking notes.
AJ, you have mine, right? Okay.
You guys got done fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did everything go?
The last 3 meetings I've watched.
Yeah.
They won't.